Hi, I'm Sarah Cowgill, sitting in for Lisa K. Donner. And joining me today are Andrew Moran, Jeff Charles, Graham Noble, and Dave Patterson. This is the Conservative 5, Liberty Nation's online TV news program. On today's episode, Republicans dropped the bomb. Another election has come and gone, and we'll discuss stagnation of it all in midterm madness gone scorched earth. That isn't enough to get the blood pumping. We throw in the Pelosi vacuum. And we have to dive into the latest big ticket holder in the billion-dollar lotto win. Capping this episode, we'll bring you another zany edition of Just for Fun, Volume 23. All this and more coming up in this edition of the Conservative 5.
Good night, everybody.
What happened on November 8th? No red wave, no blue wave. Folks feared election results would be nearly as stagnant as a mosquito pond. But when Republicans secured the House, well, it got interesting in a matter of minutes. Holy moly. House leadership dropped the A-bomb on the Biden administration in a public display with whiteboards, charts, and paperwork. Graham, what are House Republicans accusing the Biden family of? What are they accusing the Biden presidency of and his administration?
Well, Sarah, there's kind of a two-pronged approach going on here, and it's being led by Representative James Comer and Representative Jim Jordan, who are respectively going to be taking over the House Oversight and Reform Committee and the House Judiciary Committee. Now, what these two committees are going to be looking at, the first one, the Oversight and Reform Committee, is going to be focusing on whether or not, and they say they are going to present evidence that shows that Joe Biden was aware of his son Hunter's, let's call them shady, certainly appear shady to many people, business dealings abroad, that he was aware and to a certain extent involved in those dealings. That is the claim coming from Mr. Comer. On the other side, you've got the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, and he is going to be looking at a number of things related to the administration in a broader sense. And that is that whether or not the administration colluded with big tech and also to a certain extent, social media companies, but also to a certain extent, more traditional media, was there collusion to suppress certain stories that the administration did not want out there in the public eye and the public ear, specifically the Hunter Biden laptop story, of course.
So, I mean, did this just come out of nowhere, Jeff? I mean, really? I mean, just days after, an election is over and they say, well, we've got evidence and we've got this and that. So has that been going on for a while, or what's going on here?
To those who don't do this for a living and don't pay attention as much as we do, it probably came out of nowhere. But they've been gearing up for this for a while, over the past year and a half or so, when they expected to take back the House. They've already been asking the DOJ, FBI, and other agencies to start preserving documents, because they knew that once they had power, they were going to start launching these investigations. And I'm seeing some criticism about this coming from the left and the right, saying, oh, well, they should be focused on the economy, stuff like that. And I understand that. At the same time, I would imagine that they could focus on both at the same time. And plus, they don't have the Senate. They don't have the White House. Republicans aren't really in a very favorable position to do things legislatively, which is why they're focusing on the investigations. I mean, if there is some fire here where there's smoke, the American people deserve to know. And after years and years of politically motivated Democratic investigations and impeachment attempts and Russia collusion hoaxes, Democrats have no room to complain about this. So this is just the starting point. This is going to be the first of many investigations that they're going to do. So it'll be very interesting to see what they come up with.
Just following on from what Jeff said there, we should remember that when the Democrats were investigating ad nauseum every time Donald Trump sneezed or looked at Nancy Pelosi sideways, we were told, because of course then Republicans would criticize the Democrats for spending all this time investigating rather than doing what's best for the country. And the Democrats' answer was always, well, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can legislate and we can investigate at the same time. So why can't that continue to be the case going forward?
Since you're on the subject of that, I have a question for Jeff. Actually, you really dive into polling numbers over the last year or two. What have the polling data shown? I mean, does it show that the American people support hearings over more, bread and butter issues of the economy, inflation, other on Democrat or Republican? What do you see on those numbers?
Yeah, the polling showed that when Americans went to the grocery store and paying exorbitant prices, they weren't thinking about January 6th. They weren't thinking about Democratic investigations into the origins of January 6th. Now, I do still think that may have had an impact on the outcomes, but not as much as other issues. So I know that the media is going to try to use these investigations against the Republicans because they have to try to make it backfire, so to speak. But it's all going to depend on what Republicans come up with. I mean, if it's a huge dud and they don't really find anything, that's going to turn public opinion against them. But if they start finding things that the American people need to know, then I don't think it's going to backfire on them at all.
Well, I think they just flat out said we have evidence. And so we have enough to open, it's almost like a grand jury situation where we think we have enough to proceed with an arrest and a trial. That's my takeaway, and I'm not as up on this as Graham has been since he's been awake through the whole process. But Dave, I have a question for you. I mean, you've been around the horn almost, in the political world as long as I have. Have you ever seen anything like this? Back and forth investigations like this?
No, not to this extent. I think this is something new, and it really stems from the polarity that you find not only in Congress, but also in the American people. I mean, people are diametrically opposed on just about everything, and you'll see this play out, I think. It is going to be fascinating to see how the Republicans handle this.
Well, I'm interested in how actually China responds, because one of the issues that the Republicans are investigating is CFC China Energy. Now, this is supposedly independent of the government, but as anybody knows, if you're making more than $500 million, you have a connection to the Chinese government. But this was a case that actually Senator Chuck Grassley looked into, and the Senate committee looked into, and they found that the company paid nearly $5 million to Hunter Biden and his uncle James, and included everything from legal retainers. Somehow Biden offered legal advice, and then consulting fees. And they had this opulent office, and it said that Hunter Biden wanted the Biden Foundation named on it. And actually, one of the people who had extra keys to the office, according to the committee report, was President Joe Biden. So that should be one of the issues that I'm really looking forward to monitor over the next few months.
I think
they have even like allegations of human trafficking and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm like, y'all better have the goods.
Let's throw it all in there.
Yeah, I think that what will probably come to the forefront in terms of really serious allegations is when we find, if we find that all of the, and I'll use the favorite Democrat term, when we find the collusion that has been extant for some number of years between the Biden family and China, and the results of which have been the increase in China's ability to be intrusive into the economy and the building of their military, which puts our national security at risk. I think those are the things that the American people will start to think of in terms of the Biden crime family.
If I may make one prediction, I guarantee you somebody on MSNBC or the Democratic Party is going to call these committee investigations a threat to democracy. That's my prediction.
A witch hunt, no doubt.
Well, I think that's a crystal ball to see that.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Won't that be a badge of honor, though? Really?
One question has finally been answered, and that is Republicans aren't going to sit back and take it anymore. So, America, brace yourselves. We're heading for more turmoil and turbulence, steering into a presidential cycle. This could be fun. Speaker of the House has spoken. It's time to let the young guns in the House take over leadership positions. But will she continue to seek office and stay involved for the people of San Francisco, or go home to the mister? The poor guy recently had a hammer whack upside the head, for pity's sake. Of course, Madam Speaker wants to retain power, but how? The bigger question is, who will rise to fill her high heels? And I think I want to start with Jeff. What do you got going on there? What do you think?
You know, it is nice to see the Democrats starting to let younger people take over. I wish the Republican Party would kind of take a hint from that too, Mitch McConnell. Anyway, but here's the thing. Here's what we're looking at. It's possibly going to be Hakeem Jeffries. He's the one that's getting a lot of the buzz, and if he ends up being the leader of the Democrats in the House, that will further signify that the Democrats are moving further to the left. He's a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, which is known for doing absolutely nothing for Black people. He's also a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who is chaired by Pramila Jayapal. So this guy is pretty far to the left. He's from New York. So if he gets this position, it's going to be pretty significant in that it's going to show where the Democratic Party is headed. The results of these midterm elections did not give them enough of an incentive to go back towards the center. So they're going to double down now. And having him in that position would make even more sense if they do plan to go more further towards socialism.
What you got there, Dave? I know you've seen speakers come and go.
Well, I have to agree that it's time for the old guard to kind of step aside. But at the same time, I think that the younger crowd might take some lessons, because there's a reason why the old guard is called the old guard, because they have lasting power, and they have lasting power because they know how to do things and get things done. And I do think that it probably is time for the Republicans to put Mitch McConnell into a very nice pasture, but at the same time, not to lose his expertise, because quite frankly, we wouldn't have three Supreme Court associate justices had Mitch McConnell not worked his wiles.
Okay, so you're giving credit where due. I get that. Nice green pasture for McConnell.
A very nice pasture. I like that.
Very nice pasture. Graham, come on. You got to weigh in on this one.
Well, ditto to what everyone else has said. And I certainly believe that it is also time. And let's be perfectly honest here. From a Republican point of view, these midterm elections were a disaster. They really were. And to think that, although I personally predicted that, even though the Republican showing was from their point of view incredibly disappointing, I did predict that nevertheless the same people would continue to steer the party. Is it possible that someone will go? Maybe, but it looks like Kevin McCarthy has at least a very good chance of becoming Speaker of the House, and certainly Mitch McConnell is going to continue to be the leader of the Republicans in the Senate. So there's really no change there, and that is, I think, somewhat disappointing from a Republican perspective. The Democrats, Jeff is spot on. The Democrats, this changing of the guard, this passing of the torch, most likely, as Jeff points out, to Hakeem Jeffries, really does show that the party, and I said before that because of the results of the midterms, Democrats had not learned any lessons. They think somehow that they were kind of given a mandate by the American people to continue doing what they're doing. And certainly the likes of Mr. Jeffries is going to continue taking the Democrats down that road toward the extreme, I would say, ridiculous left.
What did anybody think of the speech she gave? I mean, she basically lumped in a couple of presidents and quoted, the Declaration of Independence here and there. But
I actually did like the fact that she kind of throughout that little speech managed to artfully work in constant cultural references to the cartoon Beavis and Butthead with her little kind of between the during the pauses for applause. I thought that was kind of funny. I'm sure she did that just to give everyone a laugh.
I kind of wondered if she just at the last minute substituted that line that she was stepping down for. I gladly accept my party's desire to keep me as speaker. I think she was just waiting to see what was going to happen. I really think that her speech was highly prompted by, the investigation now that has been hurled at the Biden administration. So yeah, maybe she didn't want to be a part of that. I don't know. Andrew, what do you got?
I feel bad for the investors now, because now how the heck are they going to know how to trade stocks without Nancy Pelosi at the helm? I think this is also part of a broader discussion of term limits. You have these dinosaurs in office. You have these old decrepit people like me and Jeff who are just, they shouldn't be in office anymore. You have Chuck Grassley. What was he? He's 90. He's going to be 95 by the time his next term is over. Patrick Leahy of Vermont, who's been in nearly every Batman movie, is 80. Dick Durbin of Illinois is 76. I think Nancy Pelosi voted for the Spanish-American War. So all these people just need to step down. Ouch. And, that's about it. And, I really have nothing else to add, nothing more original to add, because I agree with all my panelists here that the old guard should just step down and elect new generation. But at the same time, I mean, who's part of the new generation? AOC? That's not quite flattering for the current generation.
I think.
Where do we think we're going to go with any kind of, where are the Republicans going to take their, brief and fleeting control? What are they going to start with besides investigating the president? What else have they got? What do they have? Do they have solutions? Have they said what they want to do?
I think it's going to be interesting to see the direction that they go. You've got to look at it this way. The next 2 years is going to be, from a legislative point of view, it's going to be a kind of a twilight zone deal, because, the Republicans have control of the House now, but their margin of, their majority is actually smaller than what the Democrat majority was now. And so getting any legislation passed is going to be, interesting to say the least. And then, of course, the Democrats will have control of the Senate. So it's going to be a bit of a strange 2 years from that point of view. So therefore, it seems that the Republicans will, probably focus a very significant amount of time on investigations. But here's the thing: now that former President Trump has thrown his hat into the ring officially for 2024, the Republicans are going to look at where do they go in terms of the direction of the party. I mean, there's this major effort to kind of move away from Trump and perhaps go back to what the GOP was doing before Trump, which personally I don't think is a particularly great prospect. But are they going to do that, or keeping it in mind that Trump is now running for president and very likely may win the GOP nomination? Do they continue to move in the more kind of populist direction that Trumpism took them?
Well, I guess,
well, that killed the conversation.
I don't think Trump makes decisions lightly. And there's got to be a reason he thinks he can run and win. And I don't know what that reason is. And I don't know if the Democrats want him to run or don't want him to run. I can't get a read on it, and that's unusual in our line of work, but I really can't get a read on if they're terrified or if they're happy. If the Democrats are terrified or happy. So anybody want to weigh in on that one?
Well, they're probably happy. If you look at some of the toss-up races, I mean, Trump keeps touting his record of 200 wins or something, but I mean, that's nothing. The toss-up races, he had a 2-16 record. You couldn't get Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania. You couldn't get Blake Masters in Arizona. You couldn't get Kerry Lake in Arizona. So, I mean, perhaps the Democrats are lucky or happy when it comes to the toss-up races.
I think that Trump is you get exactly what you see. People try to read things into what former President Trump says or the way he acts, but The fact is that when he comes out and he says his purpose is to bring America back to greatness, that's perfectly consistent with everything he has said from 2015. And I think his motivation is quite simple. He believes that he's the one that can do the things that need to be done to the exclusion of others. And there's not anything more complicated than that, I believe.
Well, guys, as we steer into the skid of going into this presidential term or this cycle, I know Nancy Pelosi isn't going to disappear anytime soon. I don't think. I just don't see it. But what an interesting world we're living in right now. So stay tuned, people. Folks just recently went a little nuts as the Powerball reached $2 billion. But what many of them do not know is that the Biden administration gave away Willy Wonka's golden ticket already. The high-stakes spoils of the game actually went into the coffers of the Taliban. Yes, that Taliban. And our military affairs correspondent, the dashing Dave Patterson, is here to explain.
Thank you, Sarah. Actually, you're precisely right. The Biden administration gave away the $1.1 billion jackpot to the Taliban because they are such wonderful friends. I think there are a couple of things that people need to realize is that that's perfectly consistent with the unrealistic worldview that the Biden administration and more significantly the Department of State for the U.S. has. They look at the world the way they wished it were, not the way it really is. And so consequently, they think by giving away $1.1 billion, they can say to the Taliban, why can't we all just hold hands, sit down, and be friends? Well, we can't. And the reason is very simple. These people, Iran, Russia, China, the Taliban, they are enemies. They are not pacing challenges, the way the Pentagon would like to say. They are, in fact, threats to the United States. But there are two things, I think, that you need to take away from what has happened in Afghanistan. And the first, of course, is that the Biden administration wants to buy friendship with money, and that simply won't work. But the second and more troubling is that the cabinet level officials, we now find out from the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, has pointed out in his latest report, is that you have cabinet level officials who are actively obstructing the work of the Inspector General to find out exactly how taxpayer monies are being spent and why. This is very troubling, and everyone should realize that this is not normal order. This is obstruction of a government agency, and unlike in past reports, the Inspector General must be somewhat upset because he named the Treasury Department, the United States Agency for International Development, and of course, the State Department as the culprits. This is unusual.
Well, the State Department seems to be having some issues lately. Jeff, what do you got? Tell me what you think about this.
I mean, I don't think there's any need to be so hard on the Biden administration. They're thinking outside of the box. They're trying a brand new strategy. You ever hear that saying, "Kill them with kindness"? I think that's what Biden's trying to do. He's trying to be so nice to them that they just die off and don't bother us anymore. Maybe that's what he's thinking. Maybe in that mind of his, that's what he thinks is going to happen. But remember when Trump got into trouble because he met with leaders of the Taliban? They were all mad about that. But it's okay to give them billions of dollars worth of military equipment when we leave Afghanistan. And it's even okay to give them this lottery payment. It's beautiful. I don't understand why. Well, I do understand. I mean, he gets away with it because the media is always going to cover for him. So, I mean, none of this is surprising at all. I wouldn't be surprised if he sends them fruit baskets and lollipops in the future.
I don't know. I'm going to have to disagree with both Dave and Jeff here. I'm not one to defend the Biden administration in any regard at all. But U.S. foreign policy, this is consistent of U.S. foreign policy for years. The U.S. government is giving dictators, corrupt governments, billions of dollars every year. They gave it to Bashar from Pakistan. They gave him $10 billion. They had to borrow that from China to give it to him. They give the Saudi Arabia, they give them security worth $1 billion a year to defend from Iran. If you go back in history, in 1979, under Operation Cyclone, Jimmy Carter, he helped found the Taliban. They spent $2 billion to the Mujahideen to fight against the Soviet Union. So to think that this is just a Biden policy, I mean, perhaps Dave could correct me if I'm wrong here, but to consider that this is just a Biden policy, I disagree with that, because U.S. foreign policy is just give billions to everyone. You look at the every year the Standard Rand Paul report, the Festivus report. He's always finding how the U.S. government's giving these other corrupt governments $20 million here, $50 million, $100 million. So I don't know how this is Biden's fault when that's just standard policy in Washington.
You probably are right in the aggregate, and if you look at the State Department, you see career professionals and foreign policy experts stabbing each other in the back to try to get the chair, the Alger Hiss chair for fine diplomacy. But I think it's a matter of degree, and it seems to be far more prevalent in progressive Democratic administrations than in others. I would offer up, how do you get Iran to agree with you on the nuclear agreement? Oh, well, you send a pallet load of real American dollars, greenbacks, and in the $1 billion range. And so this is far more prevalent, I think, in among the Democrats, and because they hold in such high esteem, with all due respect to Ivy League graduates, but the Northeastern large university graduates in foreign policy, they see far more common cause with these folks. And the fact is that regardless of administration, we have never bought friendship, with the exception of perhaps the Marshall Plan, but the patina on that is wavering.
Well, the Saudis, the U.S. is buying friendship there. I mean, Biden scaled back slightly the security in the kingdom. And what's Saudi Arabia doing now? They're they're selling the energy heading east. They're going to Asia. They're making fun of Biden by slashing sales to the United States. So I think in that regard, U.S. buying friendship for years, but it hasn't worked out.
We can always, point to specific examples, which I just did, and now I'm sorry I did that. But as a common point of view in foreign policy, I think that the idea that this idea that we're going to operate in a world the way we wished it were, as opposed to the way it really is, has not served us well, regardless of administration. But I think that the Biden administration is by far the poster child, or the picture on the milk bottle, depending on whether you're in Wisconsin or not.
All right, Graham, I got to hear from you. You were jumping and biting and gnashing your teeth. So what were you trying to get across to us?
I just think one thing that a lot of people are perhaps losing sight of is that the Biden administration's approach to dealing with both Iran and with the Taliban, I believe their kind of long-term goal is to essentially normalize Islamist extremism. And I think, one thing that people in America at least haven't been focused on much over the last, 2 or 3 years is the problem of Islamist extremism. And that should be partitioned off from any kind of general comment on the Muslim population of the world. There are a lot of Muslims in the world, and I've spent a lot of time in various different Muslim countries. I have actually fought both against and alongside Muslim forces in different conflicts, and I have a great deal of respect for a lot of Muslims. But there is a big difference between being a Muslim and being an Islamist, and these Islamists are still extremely dangerous people. They have absolutely no regard whatsoever for human rights. And at the end of the day, I hate using that word, but I hate using that phrase. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is, when all's said and done, and all those other cliches, they still want to kill us because we don't believe, we don't see the world the way they do. And I think that's a problem. And I think this whole getting cozy, kind of trying to give the Iranians a break and trying to give the Taliban a break and giving them a bunch of money and pretending that we can be friends with them, as Dave points out, that's not possible no matter how much money we give them. It's all part of, I believe it's all part of trying to numb everybody to the still existing danger that these people pose to Western society in general and to the US in particular.
And Graham, I think to your point, where you see the nexus of taking the opportunity to buy friends and the rise of Islamist extremists come together was the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri. I mean, here we leave 1.1 billion, and the Taliban says, "Oh yes, we will take care of terrorists in our country." And of course, what they meant was, we're going to take care of terrorists in our country, and set al-Zawahiri up in a condominium. And thankfully, the CIA and a drone strike took him out on his lanai. But you can see how that event is the nexus of trying to buy friendship and dealing with entities that are diametrically opposed to the way in which the United States would like to see the world.
Somehow folks aren't as upset about this as our panel is. What happened to the oversight? Yeah, it looks like the Taliban is doing all that for us nowadays. Thanks, panel. After a couple of weeks of midterm stresses, it's time to have some fun with our experts on panel in a game called What's My Line? The Biden edition. I don't have a clue what he has cooking here, but here is our very own Andrew Moran to lead us to the table.
Hello and welcome to the hit new game show, which is actually called What's My Huh? Where you guess if President Joe Biden said this or somebody else. But I think we all know that the real game show is trying to make Graham Noble laugh. But it's simple, really. Even someone with a brain of a 5-year-old can get it. Quick, somebody get me a 5-year-old kid. I think we know Dave Patterson knows that joke. So before we get on to the festivities, a look at some of the latest news. India will soon be holding state elections across the country, from Madhya Pradesh to Nagaland. It's expected to be a tight race across the country. With a couple of months until the first electoral contest in Tripura, Democrat Beto O'Rourke issued a statement saying, "I'm in." Some media outlets have been looking for the Venezuelans who were sent to Martha's Vineyard by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. It turns out that the Fabulous 50 have been working in the Biden administration. Really, with President facing various food shortages across the country, including Turkey, he has employed their help and started a nationwide strategy to adopt the famous Venezuelan socialist diet of digging through garbage bags and visiting your local zoo. Finally, two people I'm sure you've never heard of, Amber Pike and Matt Barnett, are celebrating their 4th wedding anniversary. It's been an incredible time because they have yet to have an argument serious enough to consider divorce. Murder, yes, but not divorce. I'm sure Dave will also know that line. So now on to the game. First question goes to sassy Sarah Cowgill as usual. When asked if senators will regret rejecting his help for their election campaign, this president said this, quote, "No be there 16 and I've already done in 4 years and lot more last another 20 or so I'm going to be gone ye." Was this President Joe Biden or former President Donald Trump?
Gee, that's a tough one. I'm going to say Joe Biden.
That is correct. A reporter asked him why, if he thinks it's a mistake that Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock did not ask for Joe Biden's help, and that was the wonderful president's answer.
I've done some dumb things, and I'll do dumb things again.
Second question goes to Dashin' Dave Patterson. In his speech in Massachusetts, this president told reporters, quote, "And guess what? The first frost, you knew what was happening. You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so many other damn people I grew up with have cancer, and why I can, for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation." Now, this was breaking news because the president declared he had cancer. So who said this? Was this President Joe Biden or former President George W. Bush?
Well, I have these two choices. It could be Joe Biden or Joe Biden. I'm going to choose Joe Biden.
That's a bunch of malarkey.
He had skin cancer. He didn't have cancer caused by oil slicks.
That is correct. So, point goes to Dash and Dave Patterson. Third question goes to Jazzy Jeff Charles. Now, you may have been during a debate. This man asked the most existential question ever in an election debate. He said, quote, "Who am I? Why am I here?" Who said this? Was this President Joe Biden or Admiral James Stockdale?
Well, I don't know who Admiral James Stockdale is, so I'm going to go with Biden.
Actually, no, that is incorrect, Jeff. That is actually Admiral James Stockdale during the 1992 vice presidential debate, one of the most famous openings ever in U.S. history.
Who am I? Why am I here?
I was 12 years old.
And that's why I asked you that question and not Dave.
Yeah.
But of course, the most famous debate opening now in debate history is
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Hi. Good night, everybody.
So finally, the last question goes to Mr. Golden Graham Nobel Peace Prize, who said this quote, "So you go ahead and stack spaghetti sauce in the store, the supermarket. You control the guy or the woman who runs and breaks out the carts in a forklift. What happened? Was this President Biden or former Vice President Dan Quayle?"
I'm actually going to go with Dan Quayle because I don't recall Biden ever saying that, and I'm always a man who is always interested in having a good laugh. I closely follow everything Joe Biden says, and I don't recall him actually saying that. I do recall him saying that. What was it? He was he was able to stay home during the pandemic because some black woman was stocking the shelves at the grocery store or something.
Yeah, he always says something racist. He doesn't.
But I don't recall him saying that quote you
alcohol.
just gave. I don't recall that from Joe Biden.
Well, actually, the answer is President Joe Biden. He did say this on stage in 2020.
So you go ahead and you stack spaghetti sauce at a store and in a supermarket. You control the guy or the woman who brings out the carts on a forklift. What happens?
So Jeff and Graham, wow. So it's a tiebreaker between Dave and Sarah. So who said this famous line? 1.8 billion, 180 trillion billion dollars, or $308 billion. Who said this line? President Joe Biden or President Bill Clinton?
Joe Biden.
Okay, first answer, yes, that is Miss Sarah Cowgill.
Come on, Dave.
Today's winner.
Zone out on me here?
No, I don't have my buzzer. I mean, I don't have my reset button. If I had my reset button, we'd go back and
rapid round. What do they call that?
Biden.
The flash round or the lightning round? Oh my gosh!
Oh yeah.
The Pentagon is taking its button back from Dave.
Yeah, it has.
So basically, I win.
So what?
Yes, so the winner is today Sassy Sarah Cowgill, and she has won this game 2 times in a row. So congratulations, Sarah. You get a copy of this wonderful book from 20 years ago called Freakonomics. So that's all the time we have today, folks. You're all terrific people. You're wonderful human beings and a credit to your race. And once again, I'm sure Dave will know that line. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. We have breaking news here. Fox News has just called the race for Katie Hobbs in the 2026 gubernatorial election in Arizona. Congratulations, Ms. Hobbs. Thank you very much.
Oh, good Lord. How do I know you people? God, when Lisa gets back, you guys are going to be in a lot of trouble. That's it for our Conservative 5 panel today. Check out our other C5 shows and segments on your favorite video platform. YouTube, Vimeo, Rumble, we're on them all. As well, Liberty Nation has its own Roku channel where you can see all of our TV productions. Thanks for tuning in, and remember to surf on over to libertynation.com. Special thanks to our fantastic editor and post coordinator, Frank Diorio. I'm Sarah Cowgill, filling in for Lisa K. Donner. Thanks for joining us today. This has been a production of libertynation.com, where truth is making a comeback.